Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the public meeting on the Standing Committee of Economic Development and Environment. My name is Robert Hawkins. I am the MLA for Yellowknife Centre and the Chair of the Standing Committee of the Economic Development and Environment. We're joined here today with the Aurora College leadership to receive a briefing on the status of Aurora College. Please note this meeting is being live streamed to these through the Assembly social media channel. I'll now quickly introduce members so we can get moving along. So on my left, I have Mr. George Narasu from Mackenzie Delta, Mr. Julian Morris from Frame Lake. I have Ms. Shauna Morgan on the very end for Yellowknife North, Ms. Kate Reed for Great Slave, and Mr. Danny McNeely from the Great Riding of the Sawtoo, as well as online. I have Mr. Denny Rogers from the Nunavik Boot Lake, if I remember correctly. So, folks, I'd now like to ask the witnesses. As a reminder, we're using the mics. We have great staff who will manage the mics, and we'll have to direct all questions through the chair. Mr. Hanley, you're very familiar with that process, so I'm sure you'll be great. And of course, just to keep things moving smoothly. So what I'll do is I'll now go over to the witnesses, if you could formally introduce yourselves, and then at that point we'll proceed with the presentation and we'll see where it goes from there. Thank you very much, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you to the committee for showing interest in the college. We appreciate meeting with you. There really isn't anything much more important than preparing young people, next generation, for taking on jobs and training first for the Northwest Territories, and for that reason it's very important. I'm Joe Handley. I'm the chair of the Board of Governors, and with me are Dr. Glenda Barty Dell, I never know which way it is, and Dr. Angela James. Glenda is the president of the college, and Angela is the special assistant to the president. Maybe I'll just make a few comments and then we'll move ahead with the presentation. First of all, I don't know, it's not up to me to decide for you, but we have probably 20 minutes of presentation, and if we can keep questions as much as possible to after the presentation, it'll make sure we get through it. Otherwise, I'm sure there's a lot of interest in any one of the topics. What we want to do today is explain what we mean when we talk about a polytechnique and why we're moving in that direction for the last few years. And Dr. Delvardi will be doing the presentation. She's been with the college now for 5 years. I've only been on chair of the board for the last year. So we'll talk about what we mean by a polytechnique and some of the benefits of moving that direction. Some examples of specializations that we're moving toward, and they're not the only ones. I'm sure there's other specializations that'll come up to us in the next few years. Then we want to talk about some of the issues we face, whether it's financial, programs all cost money, the level of student preparation when they come to college, and by that I'm talking about the need often for the college to provide a couple of years of pre-trades training, for example, before people are qualified to get into it. And also with the numbers. We had a significant decrease in the numbers primarily because of COVID, but we can't use that as an excuse. And the big issue for us is student housing. But those are some of the main ones we'll be talking about today. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Delvardi, and we'll move ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanley. Dr. Vardy Dell, is it that way?
I answered a lot of things.
Yeah, so do I when I'm in trouble. I have it written that way. I hope I'm saying it right. So, Doctor, if you would please, we'll follow your lead. And as Mr. Hanley had asked, yes, generally speaking, we save questions to the end unless something's that complicated that requires clarification. So, and you're controlling the screen, so we'll follow your lead. Thank you very much.
Very much. It's nice to see. I do need to recognize that I see Denny on the screen because I've worked with him as the public administrator, so it's really nice to see that you're here, Denny, so thanks very much. So I think that the place for us to start really is to look at the question, and I attended a meeting recently, and somebody asked me, why a polytech and what is a polytechnic? I breathe, eat, and sleep this stuff, and so sometimes I forget that it's important to come back and look at the goal that we were attempting to move towards in the first place. And so you can see from the first slide, we're looking at there are three types of universities or colleges: there's community college, vocational colleges, polytechnics, and universities. Looking at our northern population, the variety of programming that polytechnics can provide match the needs of our industry to fill employment vacancies, allows students to start in the north closer to home, and allows those working opportunities to take additional coursework that supports their present employment in the form of micro-credentials, which I think is something that we really need to be thinking about. While universities offer courses on academic and theoretical topics like math, English, history, polytechnics focus more fully on applied skills training. They offer accredited degrees, certificates, diplomas, apprenticeships, Red Seal trades, and micro-credentials. At this point in time, the only two pieces up there that Aurora College does not offer are our own accredited degrees and micro-credentials. The rest, we actually provide a number of courses in those categories. So why a polytechnic? When we become a polytechnic university, there will be additional research funds available to the college as research pots are dedicated to certain types of schools and the goals of those schools. For the past 7 years, the Aurora Research Institute has been named as one of the top 50 research small colleges in the country. Year over year, for the Aurora College, ARI has been the only area of the college that has grown significantly year over year. So we need to pay attention to that particular piece. So being able to access different forms of research dollars is going to help to grow ARI, research in the north, help us produce our own researchers, and grow the college as a whole. So that's one of the main reasons for becoming a polytechnic. The other reason for becoming a polytechnic, and people have said to me, well, that's not really a big deal, is that we'll be able to grant our own degrees. A polytechnic university is more closely aligned with industry, which is essential to the growth of our economy and job creation here in the north. These types of experiences set our grads up for success in their chosen field. Our best PR is our students. So when our students say they receive their degree or their credential from Aurora College, it opens up a dialogue about the school. When students graduate from Southern partner schools, the same level of dialogue does not occur. Instead, the discussion is about, well, what was the Southern school like? What was the city like where it went? Work placements are typically in the south with Southern partner schools rather than the north, whereas our work placements in the Polytechnic will be with northern industry. And as you'll see on the slide, with this type of experience, learning by doing, Polytechnic students are ready to hit the ground running. They've gained valuable insight about their industry of choice, and in most instances, they've already done some of their credit work within the industry that they want to be involved with in the north. So I think it's really important that we can carry on down this pathway. Okay, so I just want to take a step back and think about, there were many goals for transformation that were created, but I think the one that puts it all into one sentence was a statement that was made by our former Minister of Education, Culture and Employment, and now our present Premier, R.J. Simpson, was to establish an effective, efficient, and sustainable polytechnic university that continues to be responsive to the employment needs of Northerners. The key to that sentence is responsive to the employment needs of Northerners. This must be done in the right order and at the right time, which then became our critical pathway with 3 particular phases that we've worked on since the foundational review in 2018. The amount of work that needed to be done, 61 recommendations from the foundational review that were accepted by the former government, which created over 200 individual work projects. Now, I do want to point out, it was over a period of 2019 to 2027 before all the work will be completed. So I think we need to recognize that there's a time frame that we want to talk about there. So some of the guiding documents and changes to legislation that happened that guided our path down this pathway. The government of the Northwest Territories created a NWT post-secondary education strategy framework, 10-year framework. You can clearly see what the guiding principles are around that. Those are similar guiding principles that we've used to create our pathway for a polytechnic. The second piece, the Aurora College Act, was updated in 2022, and it brings in our new governance structure. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we were governed by a public administrator for 7 or 8 years, and now the Board of Governors was reestablished in March of 2023, with their actual work beginning in May of 2023, with 13 members from across Canada. But very specific in terms of where the Board of Governors and how many Northern Indigenous members needed to be appointed to that board. Then we also have created an academic council. So our tricameral is 3 councils. Our academic council is internal, members from across Aurora College, including students. And that council is responsible for recommending changes to curriculum, new programming, any academic policies that affect our student experience, and they bring their recommendations to the Board of Governors. The final council that was established was the Indigenous Knowledge Holders Council, which was appointed in March of 2024, which Dr. James was responsible to develop the process and work through the engagement across the territories. So again, we have 13 Indigenous members from across the Northwest Territories who will shine an Indigenous lens on the programming and our processes at Aurora College. So together, the tricameral structure will guide the direction for Aurora College in the future. I want to make a couple of comments about 2 of those bodies. The Board of Governors is a competency-based, which means that it's not regionally based. It's competency-based, based upon what people are bringing to the board. And the Indigenous Knowledge Holders Council is the only one in Canada, the first one in Canada. Other colleges and universities have created similar structures, but they are advisory committees. This is not an advisory committee. This is a committee that will, a council that will work in the 3-council model that will govern Aurora College. And the final change was the president's, the movement of the president moving from a dual role, an associate deputy minister of post-secondary and a president role, and so we've reverted back to a president as the deputy head of the college. So moving forward, I'm not going to go through this particular slide, but I did provide it to you in terms of some of the things that we've done over the courses of the three phases. I want to move fairly quickly into the next one, which is the initial areas of specialization. These next 2 slides are really, really important in terms of the work that we were done. I was in the vice president role at the time that transformation began, and so I got phone call after phone call, text, email from a variety of sources across the NWT. Well, now that you're going to become a polytechnic, do this. This is the program we want. This is the program we want. This is the program we want. And so we needed to find a way clearly to be able to set some priorities for the college. So we started with initial areas of specialization for research and teaching. The first one was business and leadership. We tried to build on what we already had, but we included and added some work with the Terry Herald School of Aviation out of Fort Smith, and we have a collaborative program now with their pilot training. So students that come into that program graduate with both a pilot's license and a business certificate or diploma, which will allow them to start their own business in the industry. We also expanded our Northern Leadership Development Program. We have, for many years, we've had a program that was called Emerging Leaders. However, what we found was we had many people who were in leadership positions who had never had any leadership training. And so they weren't interested in attending a program that was entitled Emerging Leaders. So what we did was take the same concepts and provided a course, a program for them to enroll in to understand and work through their own development. Interestingly enough, we've just signed an MOU with the NTHSSA for 137 of their leaders to go through the Northern Leadership Development Program. These are people who are already in leadership positions, but with very little leadership development of their own. So that's a movement that we think is really important. Northern Health, Education, and Community Services was the second area of specialization that we looked at. Our Bachelor of Social Work program in 2027 will be launched. We've not had a Bachelor of Social Work. We've had a Diploma of Social Work, and then students, if they wanted to continue with their programming, would go to the University of Regina. When this program comes back, we'll be looking at laddering, which is important. We'll have a certificate, a diploma, and a degree program for Bachelor of Social Work because of the employment needs across the North in that particular area. Our Bachelor of Education, again in 2027, with the first 2 years of that being General Studies, which will launch in 2025, which will allow students to move to any degree program at any Southern school or Aurora College. So again, it's a laddering approach that we're taking. Practical nursing, we've added practical nursing with some third-party funding, personal support worker. I want to make a comment about personal support worker because where we started this particular program was, if you remember before COVID, the government of the Northwest Territories had committed to 5 regional builds for long-term care facilities. In order for them to staff those when they were built, they needed an increase in personal support workers. So we developed 5 communities where those builds were going to happen to deliver the personal support worker. Unfortunately, what happened was COVID, and government money was spent differently, but we've continued to provide distance and expand our personal support worker because we anticipate that we will have to come back to that. Early learning and childcare providers, we've increased our programming because of the $10 a day daycare. I hate to mention that particular one, but it's important. If you're going to go with $10 a day daycare, you have to have workers that can work in the field. So we've increased our certificate and diploma programs. We've also improved our distance program in early learning and childcare so that anyone that's presently working in the field, wherever they are across the North, they can enroll in this, and in 18 months, course by course, they can continue their own credential. They don't have to come face to face. So I think that that's an important piece that we've done. And then 2 other areas, skills, trades, and technology, if I could speak right, it would be appropriate. I want to comment on trades awareness programming. This has been happening through Fort Smith for a long time. These are programs that are dedicated to grade 9 to 12 students to provide access to them, to let them know what the trades are. There are 2 levels of programming. The first one is a residential program in Fort Smith. They come, it's paid for by their own regional district, school district. They come to Fort Smith, they have a residential program, they bring their chaperones with them. They are exposed to 5 trades. See what you like, see what you don't like. The second level of the program is they come back in the spring break in March, and they've now, if they're interested, they can select, I only want to be a carpenter, so I want to come and spend 5 days in carpentry. They can come back as many times as they want to these to build while they're in high school. What we have not done, and I think what we're now doing, is over the years we've put about 1,600 high school students through that program. We've exposed 1,600 students. What we don't know and what we didn't gather was how many of those actually went into the trades at the end of the day. So we're now tracking those students from grade 9 to see what the return on investment is in terms of whether that's the right type of program to do. We're involved in remediation and reclamation programming through Canor funding. We've increased our HEO. We have a huge call out for HEO both in community and in Fort Smith. And then we're involved in the second level of the Skills for Success, which again is skills, trades, and technology programming. And the final area that we've been focusing on is mineral resource and environmental management. We're doing a program review for our present environmental and natural resource trades technology program, and we're looking at potentially that may become our niche program that was recommended through the foundational review, that we need a Made in the North program that's a special program special for the North. So that may be our degree program. We haven't decided. We'll wait until the recommendations come back at the end of September before making that decision. For the first time this year, we'll be running a summer camp at Sioux Lake, which is our spot for our ENRTP camps, and this will be for grade 10 and 11 students. The students will receive a dual credit into ENRTP or into a science program if they decide to go to a southern school that offers a science degree program. And then we're working with an ECC, formerly ENR, for the involvement in the redevelopment of our ENRTP program. Again, we're looking at laddering, certificate, diploma, degree. That's really the key that we think is going to help to support the growth that's required in the North. Research chairs, we've created 3 research chairs, and I want to come back to something, my comment in the beginning. Without a university to anchor Northern researchers and their access to the national research funds, Northern residents continue to be excluded from research leadership within their jurisdiction, even as the recognition of the need for Northern and Indigenous research leadership grows. For years, people in smaller communities have been frustrated by researchers who are not from the North coming into their communities and gathering data and then leaving without sharing any of the outcomes of their data collection. ARI has been working to grow their own researchers, and developing a polytechnic university will provide additional opportunities to have that work remain in the community. Polytechnics provide opportunities to transform research capacity and cultivate appropriate support to foster a vibrant Northern research community. The Polytechnic model was selected since the focus is on offering advanced technical education and hands-on learning, and includes both community and industry responsive applied research. This transformation is motivated by the need to provide equity and access to post-secondary education for the area's residents and enhance the institutional role in research. The research chair, the 3 research chairs that we've talked about, we put 1 in each of the 3 communities. North Slave, our health and community is where the bulk of our consistent health programming is. And so that research chair is expected to work with our students and work with the health programming to increase the research opportunities in that area. The BACHA, the research chair is called the Indigenous Approaches to Environmental Monitoring, to allow the researchers there to work with our students in ENRTP. Again, applied research right from the get-go. And Aurora campus, climate change adaptation, due to the present environment and the opportunity to work with researchers from the North and from outside the North. Now, all of that was rosy and all of those things are good, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring forward some of the issues that we have at the present time. I do want to share, I run an operating budget of approximately $54 million. $32 million of that dollars comes from the GNWT through a variety of sources. So that means if you do the math, that 59.2% of the budget is not consistent dollars, but needs to be reapplied for on a regular basis. If we don't have consistent dollars to be able to grow our programs and run the ones that we presently have and support our researchers, then we don't know from year to year what that third-party funding is going to provide for us. So we really need to be talking about, if we're talking educational programming, the early learning childcare program that I just boasted about is third-party funded. So what I can't say to a student who isn't successful in a particular course this year, I can't say, well, you can come back and do that next year, because I don't know whether I'm going to have funding for that. Our personal support worker run through third-party funding, some base funded, but run through third-party funding. Again, if we're going to care for our elders in the appropriate way, then we need to have personal support workers that the program is consistent. And practical nursing, we ran that in Inuvik through a third-party request. Excellent program, but again, we couldn't say that we were going to be able to run it again, even though we know that there is a need in the area for practical nurses to work in our healthcare system. The majority of the funding that supports our arm of research at Aurora College requires dedicated resources to monitor, implement, and then report results to the funder. We need to develop ongoing proposals for funding, typically with quick turnaround times for submission. It's not unlikely for us to hear that there's an opportunity, but it needs to be the end of next week when the proposal is written. So again, we need some resources in terms of being able to continue with that third-party work. Other issues are student enrollment. Joe alluded to this at the very beginning of his introduction. Our enrollment went down across the college because of COVID. We're starting to return to pre-COVID numbers, but we still have some issues in terms of being able to recruit and retain. We often have a large number of students who come to us. However, based upon their K-12 experience, we aren't able to retain them. And we also have followed our students in terms of how long does it take them to complete I'll use a couple of examples. Our ENRTP program, it's a 2-year diploma, but we have students who take 4 to 5 years to complete a 2-year diploma based upon the requirements coming into the program. In our nursing program, we also have students who take 5 to 6 years to finish a 4-year degree. And again, that's based upon the foundational issues that they may come from some of the smaller communities across the north where they're not receiving the specialized science to meet the requirements coming into the program. We have underutilization of our community learning centers. We presently have 19 operating community learning centers. 14 of those are staffed. The 5 that are not staffed is typically because we don't have housing in the community to house a community adult educator to run programming. Housing at all 3 campuses is an issue. I've just pulled a couple of things just to give you a bit of a flavor. At the North Slave campus in 22-23, we left approximately 90 students on a wait list because we didn't have student housing in Yellowknife. So that's 90 students that didn't come to school or decided to go elsewhere because of housing. At Aurora campus, we have a wonderful dorm-style building. This present year, we had 20 empty dorm-style rooms because we know that many of our students, the demographics for our students are 21 to 45, and most of them want to come with families, and we don't have sufficient family housing units in Inuvik, which causes a problem for students to come. And then Thabatcha campus, we continue to use Brainett Hall for our dorm type activities. This picture actually looks much better than what Brainett Hall is in person, but I thought it was important to bring it forward because we are still using that building, even though there's been significant discussion around it's one of the last standing residential schools, and it should come down. However, at this point in time, we are still using it, and we have parents and grandparents who say, if you're going to put my child or my grandchildren in Brainett Hall, they're not going to Aurora College. So again, we have issues. And then on Thabatcha campus, we have a variety of other type of family housing, but they're in a bit of an issue with maintenance and disrepair. So I will stop. Those are some of the things, and I will turn it over to if there are questions or issues, or either of my other 2 individuals here would like to add anything.
Yep, thank you. Did we want to, again, keeping time efficient, of course, but did you, either of you wanted to add a little more to the overall presentation before I go to committee members, or do you just want to wait for questions? I defer to the chair first to see any issues? No? Or the college? Mr. Hanley?
One comment I want to make, Dr. Delvardi referred to K-12 experience that students have, and that's a big concern to us. It costs us a lot of time and money to prepare students who come out with a grade 12, but it's not really a grade 12, that they're not prepared to take the courses. So we have to spend a year, 2 years preparing them to take the course, whether it's in nursing or in education or any field. And that's a concern of how do we work more effectively with the K-12 system so that grade 12 is grade 12. And I think the students will feel a lot better as well than being led to believe they have grade 12, but then come in and find out they don't qualify.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to start with Looks like Mr. Narasu first, and we'll work our way around. We've done questions multiple ways, so why don't we just try to, I won't time them, but I'll say let's try to make 2 efficient questions and we'll work our way around the room. Thank you. Mr. Narasu, please, if you'd lead us off.
Oh, sorry, one more thing.
Sorry, one more thing. We now have Mr. Testart, MLA for Range Lake, joining us, and I just wanted to officially put him on the record. As you can see, he's online. Okay, my apologies, Mr. Narasu, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. My concern or inquiries, what Mr. Handley has touched on is the readiness of students wanting to go into these programs at this new institution. I know in the smaller communities, they're lacking the education. They're being socially promoted, and after they're given their diploma, they have nowhere to go. They're not ready for any courses. I saw this in the Learning Center in Fort McPherson. I was doing some refreshing courses when I was about 52 years old, and recent graduates came in, they wanted to take trades courses. And they were literally having problems with basic multiplications. They were up there on the board having problems. And if you're going to have this new institution trying to get an increase of students attending this new polytechnic school, I think, like you touched on it a bit, but will you be working directly with the high schools in particular, trying to get them ready and let them know what courses they need and what's expected of them? It's just like for them starting all over again when they go into they finish high school and they're going into post-secondary school, or trying to anyway. It's very difficult for them. I've seen it, and it's not good to see them. They go in with the expectation saying that they have a diploma, so they're ready for after high school life, and then they go into a different post-secondary school. Then they're not qualified, and it's a real hard thing to see. I just want to know if you'll be working directly with the high schools to see if what courses they need. And I think they're doing sort of a move to a different high school curriculum. They're moving to the BC. I don't know how effective that will be in the smaller communities. They should leave the high schools in one central area. I think it is more effective in bringing it to the small communities. There's pros and cons of bringing the school back directly to the communities, but I think this wasn't really thought out very good. I think it was more of a cost measure than anything else, but our students are really suffering now. So yeah, just if you're willing or going to work directly with the education department and the high schools to try to improve the success rate in high schools anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narasu. I look to who do I direct the question to? Mr. Hanley, if you would please.
I'll make some introductory comments and then I'll turn it over to the doctors. Yeah, it's a tremendous problem for us, a challenge, because we want to work with the high schools. We don't want to gradually become an upgrading institution, preparing people for trades and so on. We want them to come there with a full grade 12 that is a grade 12. So from the board's perspective, we're very concerned about this. we realize that there may be more we can do, and we will be discussing it further this year. But I also personally, and I haven't talked a lot to the board, but we have to some degree talked about teachers in the K-12 system who feel under pressure to turn out grade 12 graduates. No matter how they do it, the more they can get at the graduation ceremony with a grade 12, the better they seem to have done. But at the same time, trying to balance that with turning out good quality grade 12. So some of the responsibilities with teachers. We're also concerned about the number of young people who, because they're not qualified for to take on college courses, are just roaming around the streets in some communities, not doing much of anything when they could be, and they are our next crop of employees in all kinds of fields. So we've been trying to reach out to leaders, the community leaders and the regional leaders, to say, how do we work together with you? Because it's not just the teachers, it's the whole community, and in our view has to encourage students to get through high school, get a grade 12, get into college. And so there's no easy answer to it, but I'll turn it over to Dr. Dalbarty first.
Dr. Fardidel, and of course I should remind all committee members, we're walking a fine line between social development's mandates about specific programming versus the economic development environment mandate of how do we stimulate opportunity, support growth in the community along the learning network, as the member had highlighted that support this area. So we'll try to keep our mandate within the realm, or we'll get a sharply worded email from social development. We wouldn't want that. So Dr. Fardidel, if you could.
So a couple of comments related to, I think you've clearly outlined the issue that we struggle with. We do have a community and extensions department. We have the 19 community learning centers that I mentioned. That staff is working with ECE, which is responsible for the K-12 system, around ensuring that the upgrading that we do provide at those centers is in line with the BC curriculum. So we're doing a significant amount of work, so we're moving that piece together in terms of that. The other thing that we're looking at is we're looking at different models of delivery for what we can do in small communities. Now, it doesn't address what you're talking about in terms of when they come out with a diploma, they have a diploma. We get them after the fact in terms of that particular piece. And so I don't have a quick answer for you in terms of what we can do. I can tell you what we are doing, and that's looking at a different model for delivery for upgrading in the communities. And we're looking at working through the BC curriculum. We've also just created 2 additional positions, one in Fort Smith and one in Hay River, Fort Smith and one in Yellowknife. And again, because they're located there doesn't mean that that's the only place that they will work. And this is the first time, and I find myself incredible to say this, it's the first time that we are creating academic advisory positions so that students that are interested in coming into Aurora College will meet with an academic counselor either on-site or via Teams or in another virtual method to talk about what the pathway for them could be for them to be able to get where they want to be. As an institution, we should have had academic advisors from the get-go. So that's another thing that we're looking at in terms of trying to address the problem that students aren't coming out of K-12 with what they need.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. James, if you had something you wanted to add, and then I'll go back. Oh, you gotta wait for the mic. You got. Oh.
There you go.
My apology. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Narisu, for your comments about the education system that we currently have. I just want to talk a little bit about the overall education system in the continuum, because we start with early learning and childcare, we go to JK-12, and then we are adult and post-secondary. So just to understand the Northwest Territories, after being working in the education system for the past 35 years, understand that even when the children come in at the JK to K-12, they are delayed in some ways, shapes, and forms as a result of a myriad of issues. And so if indeed you don't have excellent teachers all along the way, as well as principals who are excellent educators, then that further exacerbates the issue of being delayed and delayed. And so as a result of a problem of, in the Northwest Territories, we have a revolving door of JK-12 teachers that come around and don't really, some of them don't really stay very long, and as a result, that further exacerbates the issue of a delay in education. And so it's a myriad of issues all along, and then all of a sudden they decide at high school that they're there for 3 years. That is another issue that educators across the Northwest Territories are dealing with, because sometimes what happens with a lot of our learners is that they just need more time. And I've been in the K-12 system for many years, and in my own experience, that time needs to be given permission by the principal for a student to stay. I don't know who it is that decided that 10, 11, 12 have to be done in 3 years and that's it. Oftentimes it is more time to do, as we're saying, some of the basic upgrading and also the decisions made on where they would like to pursue education after they do finish grade 12. And then here in our own post-secondary world, that's another area that we have to recognize, just like what we do in the ENRTP program and the nursing program, is that we realize that sometimes they don't take the 3 years or the 4 years, they take 5 years or 6 years. And once again, that costs additional dollars, of course, and has an economic development impact, but I don't disagree with more time for students to be fully prepared to carry on their programming all throughout the education system. One of the really wonderful things that we've started, though, in the last, I think it's now 3-4 years, we have community education advisors that are the liaison between the high school system and the adult post-secondary world. And as a result of these career and education advisors, they work in the school system, but they work with the high school students to allow them to really pursue and advance and explore what their options are in the adult post-secondary world. And I think that's a very good add-on, and Aurora College works closely with these community education advisors in order to have students come in at a more ready state, but also realizing again that necessity to just give the permission of more time sometimes for students to advance in the areas that they want to advance in, whether it is in whatever stage of adult and post-secondary. Marcy Joel.
Thank you, Dr. James. I'm going to go back to Member Narasu for a quick follow-up. We've just used 15 minutes on the, no, it's just collectively. And committee's time is short by, essentially we have 45 minutes in the presentation, and at this rate we'll never get through all our members, including we have our 2 members online who would like to ask questions. So I'll go back to Mr. Narasu. If I don't want to rush people, but I want to keep in mind that if I don't, other members will be disappointed, and I'd rather not avoid that as possible. So that includes the witnesses as well. Thank you. Mr. Narasu, if you had a quick follow-up, and then we'll move along.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll get right into the question. There's, when students are going to school, they're going to, some of them have to go into upgrading, and then I've seen that they stay in there for a number of years, not having a goal. They keep going to the school because it offers them some advantages of childcare and other incentives. How would you address this concern of accepting students and just monitoring their progress? Like if they're in upgrading for 3 years, would you direct them in a different path, or maybe try to get them into one of the fields that the Polytechnic University will be offering? It's just try to get people on the right track at a faster pace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narasu. Who do I direct the question to? Okay, Chairman Hanlon, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. If, when people make comments or questions, as they direct to one of us, that will speed it up. Just very quickly answering Mr. Nersu. Sometimes things are too stovepiped, where we're doing our thing, K-12 is doing their thing, and the two don't work together. And I think the same is true with political leaders as well. I just had a conversation a few days ago with the president of the Gwich'in Tribal Council. He brought to my attention that there's a lot of houses being built in the Beaufort Delta area. We have probably $2 million worth of mobile training equipment in the trades that sits in our yard. It hasn't looked like it's moved for a long time. There are young people out there who may not have the academic qualifications to go to a trades program, but can be trained to some extent. So we just need to be more flexible as a college, and so does the K-12 system. It's just wasted human energy to each of us defending our turf. So I'm going to follow up with the discussion with him on that and see if we can work something out. And we might have to do it regionally, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. If you follow up in writing, please send it to the committee as well, so we're involved. If you follow up in writing, I'm saying please send it to the committee as well. Okay. I am going to move to Mr. McNeely next, MLA for the Sahtu, and I would remind all members we're here to talk about the what opportunities the college plays in the role of the economy and how it interrelates. And there's some overlap and a little drift, and I can appreciate that. And I don't want to let you miss an opportunity that's important to you. So we'll do our best to keep focused. Mr. McNeely, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I'm just going to give you a picture on the Sahtu education. We don't currently have a superintendent of education. And there's a number of weaknesses in that whole community of education, whether it's Aurora College having a presence there and Department of Education. And we really need a lot of help. During my last assembly, July 2019, I initiated a Sahtu symposium in Delaney. A leader came up to me and said, "Who initiated this?" I said, "I did." "What's the problem?" He said, I've never seen an education symposium in the region before, and nothing has happened since then. So that just gives you the measure of our investment in education in the Sahtu. As I said earlier, we really need help. Right from the building or the new school that the 18th Assembly approved in Cold Lake, and yet that building still remains there, the log building with cloth curtains for a door. So are we really advancing the Sahtu education? I'm just focusing on Sahtu because I see a need. And there is a huge amount of potential. I'm glad to see that you have reclamation, but we can put details on that. In my previous career, my hobby was to develop a gathered basket of information on education and call it something. So I called it NORTRAM, Readiness Training for Reclamation and Remediation. So you got a number of clients that are popping up here that will create those positions. You got the closure of Diavik, you got the upcoming closure of Norman Wells oil field. Does that really entertain a new emerging industry in preparation for after we recognize a new emerging industry training? I think so. And unique to the discussion of remediation is the fact that the federal government owns the oil field in Norman Wells. Each year they take out 2 payments. One in the form of royalty, second one an ownership profit. So I think if we can work together on detailing Aurora College in Norman Wells as maybe a tech school specializing in the academic programming identified by a third party. And the third party could be the Aurora College operating that institution on behalf of the stakeholders. Whether it's Canor, whether it's Department of Ed, Aurora College is there already, and the staff you got there are doing an excellent job, I might add. I'm a full believer of seeing is believing. If you don't see it, you talk in this corporate boardroom here without any knowledge of the enrollments that are out there. So identifying the weaknesses in education in general to the players that promote and offer education really allows how to make it better. And I look forward to working with you on Nortran. If you're willing to proceed with this, I can share the information with you and to see how we can play an active role together with the region to initiate this initiative. Right now, there's a couple of beneficiary members that have to go down to the northern British Columbia Rockies College or whatever it is to do academic or environmental studies because we don't offer it in the north. And those are direct positions related to the remediation industry. What other trades are going to emerge from this new industry? So once we identify the targets, then we can say, okay, well, can we offer biology? Biologists are going to be needed. Water technicians are going to be needed. Right now we have a bunch of imported tradespeople through companies like AECOM coming in and doing those studies required by the client, in this case Imperial Oil. So I look forward to improving education. I'm a sole believer in getting our workforce ready for the next emerging industry. So I guess my question is to you are you interested in working together on Nortran? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely. Do we have anyone who wants to take the question specifically, or okay? Dr. Vardy Dell, please, if you would.
So thanks for your comments. There's some of this stuff that I'm aware of and some of it I'm not, so thank you very much in terms of sharing. I think Joe was speaking in terms of silos, and I think we have to stop the silos. Partnerships are really, really important, but I do want to come back to some of the positions that you've talked about that we need in the north, we don't have. And one of the things that we've talked about at Aurora College is growing your own. And I think now I'm back with Mr. Neersu in terms of if we're going to create biologists, if we're going to create water technicians, then we need to have our students prepared to be able to be successful in those programs. So the short answer is yes, we can talk about what that partnership could potentially look like, but I think the longer answer is how do we grow our own in terms of making sure that our students are ready to go into some of the programs and some of the positions that we're looking for. A polytechnic will do that, but we do need the students to be able to be ready, as was identified earlier, to go into some of those positions.
Thank you, Doctor, for that. Do we have a short follow-up, or we're only worried about time? Mr. Chairman Hanley, if you would.
I'll keep it very short. Yes, to answer your question, yes, we're interested in Nortran, and I'd like to find out more as chair of the board of what way we can work with it.
Very good. Thank you. Member McNeely, if you had a short follow-up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the response. I welcome the opportunity to share what I've gathered so far. And I've been having some dialogue with the Olds College, Imperial, Aurora College. I'll send an old email again, which I forget who it is offhand I sent, but we'll reactivate those discussions. And my next question is that if we look at some of the enrollments you have in the 19 LCs or learning centers, and you had mentioned 14 is being used. If I recall correctly, I think you have 21 students enrolled in that group of LCs, and your student enrollments in Aurora College is in a neighborhood of 200, 290-ish, and also your staff consists of a little over 300. So I just share those numbers, and I think if we recognize our student to teacher ratios, maybe we can improve on that, which ultimately, at the end of the day, improves on education delivery and attendance. So, given that, is the SAW2 going to see any attention to some of the options the Aurora College has taken towards improving the SAW2 region, and other regions for that matter, on enrollment, attendance, and so on? Yes, we can say COVID has an impact, but there's a lot of industries that continued on despite the fact COVID was here. And I think we can stop at that, and we can move ahead for the term of this assembly and have a fruitful discussion in 3 years from now to say, okay, this is where we went in terms of attendances. That would measure our delivery capacity to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Member McNeely. Dr. Vardidale?
If I could comment, I think you're correct. As you heard me say, there's always probably going to be a crisis. I think we've utilized the excuse of COVID too long in terms of what happened during COVID. We are developing a new model for delivering in this community learning centers to increase access. That's really what we need to be thinking about in those community learning centers, is to increase access for students to participate in what they need at present and to provide pathways for them to be able to move into, if they wish, to move into another type of program. So I agree with you 100%. The other thing that we talk a lot about in the community learning centers is it's not just academic upgrading that we want to provide there. There's a significant amount of continuing education that I think we can provide in those community learning centers that people have been requesting for a long time. I've mentioned in my presentation micro-credentials. We have a significant opportunity, and I'll point this one out in particular. Every community has an SAO or a finance officer. Every community has been asking for, can we have some accounting courses delivered in those community learning centers? And so that's going to build capacity across the north in all of the communities versus asking people to go and take a business administration certificate or diploma. They're not interested in that. They may already have that, but they need some upgrading or they need an additional accounting course in order to move into those positions. So looking at micro-credentials, that will allow us to tailor specific courses, not programs, but specific courses in communities that communities are asking for. So I'm with you in terms of trying to bring those numbers up, certainly, but I think the micro-credentials will provide an opportunity to help the communities that we're asking for.
Thank you, Doctor. I now have Ms. Ms. Reed. I was going to say Ms. Kate as usual. I now have Ms. Reed. She's got the next round of questions. Please, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for your presentation. I will try and keep my questions brief. I expect this one is going to have a brief answer, but let's go for it. On slide 9, speaking specifically under the Mineral Resource and Environmental Management section, your third bullet speaks to in discussion with ECC around the co-location of a new lab, and you did not speak to that in your comments earlier. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that, please.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. That's why I rose my hand. So, Dr. Vardidale, please.
That's the right comment. So Absolutely. So I just want to come back to, I didn't talk about the facilities master plan that was produced as part of transformation. And the facilities master plan really looked at improving Aurora College facilities across the north, not just in Yellowknife or any of the campus sites. We have now in the process of producing a Facilities Master 2, which is specific to the community learning centers in terms of what communities are asking for in terms of redevelopment or future development there. One of the principles that we operated on in terms of the Facilities Master Plan is partnering and co-location. So when we talked about a campus, and I want to say this clearly, we're not talking about a new campus in Yellowknife out of the Facilities Master Plan. We are talking about the first campus. We are in leased places all across Yellowknife at this point in time, so it really is talking about the first campus in Yellowknife. But in that Facilities Master Plan, we've talked about co-location. So we talked about College Nordique, Jacinta, Hodasita, all being co-located together because that provides one-stop shopping for students. So one of the opportunities now that's presenting itself is we're working with ECC in terms of what our ENRTP program could maybe look like going forward, but they're looking at they require a new lab at this point in time. If we were building a campus in Yellowknife at this point in time, we would probably look at a co-location for that lab so that our students could also participate. But the timing is not going to work. So one of the things we've talked about is that we've been asked if would we, Aurora College, support the co-location of the new lab to bring our ENRTP students in for some of the water testing and those kinds of things. So that's where that comes from.
Thank you, Doctor. And if you did have a master plan, I would, update it. I would encourage you to send it to all members so we're all apprised, if appropriate, through the minister's office. I'll let you come back to that one. I'll go back to Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. That's helpful. I'm also, this was not in your presentation, but I was just doing a little bit of reading before we met today. I was curious, you have a critical milestones timeline available that was updated in August of last year. Could you speak to whether that timeline is still up to date and relevant, and if there's any slippage? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Vardy-Dell, please, if you would.
We're looking at, so the end of that critical milestone is that in May of 2025 is scheduled to be the launch of the Polytechnic University. I'm not sure that will be the case. We are presently working with the Campus Alberta Quality Council to look at our institution to determine whether we are ready to become a polytechnic. And in order for us to be able to meet the work that they require, we must also have a program proposal to go along with it, because we do not have our own degree programs at this point in time. The only one is through UVic, and that's approved through the BC Education Council, whereas we have a government-to-government agreement now with Alberta. And so we're looking at going through the CAQC, as I mentioned, but they require a program proposal, and we do not have a program proposal. We haven't identified yet which program would become our Made in the North degree. So that may be a delay for us, but I can't speak to what that delay will look like, but I think that that's what we're talking about now, and we're working with the board in terms of, and through the minister's office, in terms of whether that will be cause us a delay for the May of 2025 launch, which was initially in our critical milestones.
Thank you very much. I now have Mr. Morris next, and then Mr. Testarts, and Ms. Morgan thereafter. Okay. Ms. Morris, if you would.
Thanks. Yeah, my first question, I'd like to just build upon what Ms. Reed asked about. I mean, I noted myself when I was looking at the 2022 to 24 mandate agreement that there are a number of milestones in there that have either been missed or we don't seem to be moving forward with them. I won't list them here for respect of time, but so noting that we're not heading towards hitting the May 2025 launch as planned, I'd be interested to hear what challenges are you facing which are getting in the way of moving forward with this transition in a timely manner? And what support specifically do you need from GNWT to succeed at this? Like what are the missing pieces?
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Dr. Partydale, please.
Joe, you can answer that?
Dr. James? Or one second, I'll wait.
I guess me. So when the transformation was announced in 2019 or 2018, and then we started the work in 2019, the decision was also made that the transformation work would be paid for using the Aurora College surplus at that point in time. We had approximately a $7 to $8 million surplus at that point in time. The structure that was decided upon, which was a necessary structure because we were under-resourced to take on the work that needed to be done to move in this direction, was that we would create an Aurora College transformation team, which was put together by the former president and director of transformation. A significant amount of work was done, but we worked through working groups and the Aurora College transformation team. Now, the people that were hired in the Aurora College transformation team were absolutely necessary and required, but that was their job and their only job. The people that were to inform that work and work along in those working groups was Aurora College staff. Aurora College staff also had their real jobs to do, as well as the work on transformation. So all of the working groups were put together with a combination of Aurora College staff and Aurora College transformation team. So the first phase of the work, the policy work, the process work, the new legislation, all of those items were worked upon and were completed as part of the critical milestones to move us closer to transformation. However, I disbanded the Aurora College transformation team at the end of December of 2023 because we no longer had dollars to continue with that work. And the projects that were left have been reassigned into with Aurora College staff, which has slowed down the outcomes or the production from the work that needed to be done. Because again, the staff at Aurora College are continuing with their own work, plus the added projects that were coming from the critical milestones. That typically would have been led by the Aurora College transformation team, but we no longer had dollars available to continue for them to work solely on the transformation.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Morris, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I mean, I could delve quite a bit deeper into that one, and so I guess, I mean, you've kind of answered the question, what support do you need from GNWT to succeed? So I'll move on to a different question. So noting that, you know, as you noted in your presentation, the college needs housing. There's need for a campus in the North Slave. So has Aurora College been doing anything to identify funding for this infrastructure, pursuing partnerships, agreements, MOUs, going out to philanthropic organizations, the kind of work that needs to be done to kind of identify sponsors for buildings, things like that I've seen in universities in the South? I'm just wondering, because I know that GNWT needs to be a partner in this also, but I'm just wondering kind of what's being done outside of that. Has the college been working on identifying funding through the federal government, or even creating a plan to work in partnership with GNWT on going out, sort of a strategy to identify and obtain funding for moving forward with this infrastructure, which is critical to the transition succeeding.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Hanley. Mr. Hanley.
Now, very briefly, yes, we're moving forward on it. We're very aware of the problem. A challenge to us is that the problem is different in each of the campus centers. The issues, as Dr. Delvardi said, is in Fort Smith, it's quality of housing. And it's the fact that we're using an old residential building that people want to get rid of. In Yellowknife, it's just generally the cost and the shortage of housing all around. In Inuvik, it's the kind of housing we have. We've got empty single student residence facilities, but we don't have enough for married people. We have hired a consultant to take a look at our housing needs. The board will be meeting next month with that person to get an update, and we'll have our plan put together. I don't know if there's more you want to add.
Thank you, Mr. Henley, and of course we'd be very eager to hear whatever the consultant comes up with. I now go to Dr. Barty Dow.
So the other piece of this is there has been some federal engagement throughout the course of transformation in terms of the federal dollars to support Aurora College moving forward. In the 19th Assembly, there were three engagements with three federal ministers who support in principle what we're doing. However, we haven't seen the dollars at this point in time, so we will be following up with that moving forward. But what we're doing in the meantime is identifying, before you go to anyone to ask for dollars, you need to know what you need. So that's the reason for the housing assessment that Mr. Hanley just spoke to. So once we understand exactly what we need and what that costing will be, then we will know what we'll be asking, and we'll decide where we can go to look for some partnerships around this. This can't be done alone by GNWT. It won't be done alone by the feds. It won't be done alone by Aurora College. You mentioned philanthropic. We are exploring some of those options as well.
Thank you. And again, I would appreciate, on behalf of all members, anything you can share as appropriate, obviously. I now go to Dr. James, who would like to also add to this. Please.
Just to add on to what Dr. Vardidella is saying about the federal engagement, is that it will be very important for Aurora College as well as our board moving forward to ensure that we have all of our, per se, ducks in a row, with making sure that we are clear with our facilities, our master's facilities plan, that we have our Aurora College strategic plan, that we have our post-secondary education 10-year framework, and that as well we're gleaning from the publications that are coming from the federal government. We have the Northern Arctic policy framework that's coming forward, that's talking about the advantages of transformation, in addition to the recent February 2023 Conference Board of Canada talking about the necessity for transformation of Polytechnique to take place in the Northwest Territories to decrease the gap of infrastructure and the Indigenous populations and their needs and wishes moving forward. So when we do re-engage with the federal government, along with the territorial and federal government and the Aurora College, then these documents have to be all in place. And I think that we're in good standing as a result of the past work that has been done as we re-engage with our federal counterparts. RC Joe.
Thank you for that additional information, Dr. So I now go to MLA Testart, then I have MLA Morgan. I don't have MLA Rogers on the list, but I've got him on the list just in case he does. Yeah, he's signaling one. So I'll proceed to MLA Testart next, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee for allowing me to ask a question. I note that the college has always been primarily concerned with the education of Northerners, and that necessitates a great deal of effort expended towards, for lack of a better word, remedial education. to correct deficiencies around the the K to 12. But with a polytechnic institution or just a post-secondary institution, should our focus not be on students generally and how we can get more students to come in? Because that's how you're going to fund your operation. So do you have a mind to not just student outcomes or student success, but student experience as well? And how are you targeting those students? How are we ensuring we're getting foreign or international students to come into the campus because they can pay higher rates than Northern or Canadian students typically? And that's going to help revenues. How are we going to bring Southern students in? I just feel like the focus still seems to be kind of in that mode where we're thinking very two-dimensionally about what Aurora College is, and essentially it's just a place for upgrading. Thank you.
Dr. Fardidel, please, if you would.
Thanks for the question. It's a prickly question that people, there are two sides of every coin, probably seven sides of a coin. I'm going to make a comment, and it's my opinion, but we have done a significant amount of work understanding the demographics of who our students are who come to Aurora College. And typically that work is really important because we have to start using data to support our decisions versus anecdotal information. So our students are typically not coming directly from high school. The bulk of our students are between the ages of 21 or 22 and 45. That's typically the age group that we get. And again, many of them come to Aurora College as families. If we look at a population of 45,000 people in the Northwest Territories, and we take every person in the Northwest Territories who is between the ages of 21 and 45, and we put them in bums in our programs, wherever they want to go, we will still have empty seats. Because there are people who are already educated, there are people who are not interested, there are people who have made different choices, they don't want to come to post-secondary, so we still have empty seats. However, all of our priorities and processes that we have at Aurora College right now provide priority entry into our programs from Northern Indigenous students. So even if we took everybody, again, in that age group and we put them in our seats, we would still have empty seats. So it's time for us to start thinking about how are we going to attract other students? And I think the way we attract other students is what I spoke to earlier in terms of we have to really have niche programs that meet the needs of the North, that are different than just be delivering Southern programs in the North. We really want to have programs that match our industry, match our environment, and match our peoples. And that's the way that we're going to attract those other domestic students and international students to come into the North, which again, I don't want to balance our budgets on the back of international students, but what I want to do is to fill those seats with students who are interested in what we're offering in the North for the North. I think that's the key. Right now, if I just speak quickly to international students, they are the last to be accepted. So our applications open for all of our programs on November the 1st each year. We take first qualified, first in, so some of them are, we don't do competitive entry at this point in time. However, what we do want to do is take our Northern students first. So if we take our Northern students first, and unfortunately, the practice has been our Northern students always apply late. They never apply the 1st of November. They don't apply until May or June. So then we're not accepting them till late. So then we're not accepting international students until after that call is done. If we accept an international student in June or July, they're not getting a study permit to come here for September. So again, we have to flip how we accept students, and we also need to increase our niche programming so that students are wanting to come to the North to fill the seats that, again, if we took everybody, we're still not filling our present level of seats.
Thank you, Doctor. I go back to MLA Testart for a quick follow-up, and then we'll proceed from there. Please.
Thank you, and thank you for that. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So you know the solution, I guess, that, or you know the problem and the steps you need to take. Is that the plan going forward? And when can we start to see that kind of changing the enrollment process? All the things you spoke of. When can we expect to see that put in place? Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Testart. I go to Dr. Vardy Dell, please.
Working on it. The other complicating factor here is housing.
Thank you for your efficient response. Thank you. I also have no problem. I also have Dr. James who would like to offer some further comment to that. Please, if you would.
And to add to what Dr. Vardell is describing about, and also to speak directly to Emily Testart's question, is that in Aurora College we have a lot of stories about why is enrollment increasing, why is the student experience not in this way or that way, and that is a lot of anecdotal information. And so Aurora College has since been working on data collection in the form of a strategic enrollment management and marketing plan. It was a 3-year study, and it'll allow us to develop the strategies and the tactics to move ahead in order to increase enrollment and be basing that movement forward on data-driven decisions, as well as the second phase of it is happening right now, 2024 to 2027, and we'll be concentrating a lot on, of course, management of enrollment and the increase of enrollment, but also the marketing. How do we get to the high schools and the kids, and how do we actually base our decisions and our interactions in a way to improve the enrollment and as well as improve the student experience at Aurora College. Marcy Jo.
Thank you kindly, Doctor. I now have MLA Morgan, and then I have MLA Rogers, and we'll see how things look based on urgency and time thereafter. So please, if you would, MLA Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I see that, so there's reductions in federal funding that, were previously allocated for the establishment of the Polytechnic. I assume that it was sort of planned that there would be an establishment period and there would be federal funds for that period, but then the funds would drop off, assuming that we get established and the transition funding would end. It looks like there's been delays in the transition to the Polytechnic. So how are you coping with, delays but at the same time reductions in the funding that you need to make this transition happen?
Okay, just a second. Thank you, MLA Morgan. Doctor, please, if you would.
Very, very quickly, MLA Morgan, is that the delay in transformation, of course, is a complicated issue because we do understand that as transformation was moving forward in federal interaction between GWT and federal, the talks were the talks were planned. But what happened, of course, we know last year was as a result of the evacuation and then the delay in the academic year at Aurora College, as well as the delay in even beginning our GWT. All of those exacerbated the delay in the transformation. And so as a result, those federal territorial talks are essential as we move ahead and try to get back on board in terms of, just like when Dr. Vardell spoke about those federal ministers that the former Minister of Education arranged. All of these federal ministers were nodding at the investment that was needed in Northwest Territories for transformation and a new Polytechnique. So those are all positive statements. But as a result of even the GWT, which really didn't get started until the new year, it's February, March, and decision making, that too has been delayed. So as a result, it's been a domino effect, and so we need to recoup and get back on the federal territorial talks about funding the Polytechnique and the transformation. Marcy.
Thank you, Dr. James. Dr. Vardidel, you had something further you'd like to add, please?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding here. You're referring to federal dollars for the Polytechnic. We don't have federal dollars for the Polytechnic. We have had talks about the federal government supporting the moving towards the Polytechnic. The transformation work that's been done to date has been paid for by the Aurora College surplus. So I think there's some misunderstanding in terms of, I mentioned earlier, show me the money. The talks have happened. There has been, yes, everybody thinks it's a really good idea, but actually receiving the dollars to continue to move forward has not happened.
Thank you, Doctor. Ms. Morgan, follow up, please, if you would.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. I also wanted to ask about the Indigenous Language Diploma Program, which I understand there's been money on the books for several years, GNBT money, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. My understanding is that many years ago, there were programs, I believe through the college, that produced a whole sort of cadre of interpreters, language experts, and that, but that kind of fell off, and now we have, as I understand it, sort of an aging demographic of interpreters and language experts, and what are we doing to ensure that there are younger generations who can take on those roles, take on jobs? There are opportunities economically within Indigenous languages. Also, it's obviously very culturally important, but so are there plans to have Indigenous language programs to revive a diploma program at the college?
Thank you, MLA Morgan. If you would, Dr. Vardidel, please help.
So I think the history is important in terms of what you said. I think the outcome is also very important in terms of what you said. We have just submitted a proposal for funding to ECE to do a planning for an Indigenous language diploma. It'll be a pilot program. It will run first with, the pilot will be with the Kalicho individuals, and we are hoping to have there'll be planning that'll happen over the next year. We're hoping to have either 25, 26, or 26, 27 when we will formally launch that program. So there are plans in place to do that. We have not received the funding, but we've received yes, we will get the funding, but we submitted the funding for that program and the planning at the end of March of this year.
One second. Dr. Vardidel, if you could repeat that, the pause, I think our technician thought you were finished. If you could repeat that last little bit, thank you, on the record.
What was the last thing I said? Oh, as soon as we get the funding, then we will hire staff and we will move forward and we'll work with ECE, the language secretariat at ECE, as we move that forward. Yes.
Thank you. And those comments, just so that you know, if you're not on, your mic isn't on, those, I'm sure we have thousands of people streaming this all over the world, hanging on every word, and they would miss out on that final phrase and have no idea that that was being withheld, that critical information was being held with them, or withheld from them, that is. Dr. James has something further to add before I move to MLA Rogers. So please, Dr. James, if you would.
So, MLA Morgan, for that question. That's good news on behalf of the Indigenous peoples of the Northwest Territories who have been waiting many years for Aurora College to move ahead. In the meantime, though, ECE was able to move take really, really good steps in terms of developing the Mentor Apprentice program. And so that is a community-based program. And so what Dr. Vardidel is talking about is the next phase of this, to take it away, not take it away, but share it with Aurora, with the ECE, to make it into a post-secondary approach to Indigenous language realization. So that's great news. Raison d'être for Aurora College for moving ahead in that direction. And I look forward to that Tlicho pilot happening most likely in about a year or so, depending on all of the pieces coming into place. And there is still such a healthy population of Tlicho elders and language speakers, so that we've decided to start with the strong language. And then, of course, the results of the pilot will inform the next language group being chosen. So, merci, Joel.
Thank you, Dr. James. I now recognize MLA Rogers, who's now up for questions. Please, if you would.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I love being the member who sits between the committee and lunch. It's great. Thank the committee for allowing me to sit in on your meeting today. I certainly appreciate that. I'm happy to see, and thanks for the presentation. I'm happy to see that the boards are established and we're moving forward. I guess my question is likely to follow up more on Mr. Morris's question as well. And I understand that the Transformation Committee's work was done with the college's surplus of $7 million. I understand that committee is now disbanded and that work's being taken on by the college. So I guess my question is, do you have the capacity at the college? Are we, remember, are folks there going to be a little overwhelmed? Are you getting what you need in there? And I guess that ties into Mr. Morris's question: is that what support do you need? And if the answer is money, have you expressed that and what that would look like in order to continue to do this important work? Thank you.
Okay, I am looking for a volunteer. Who would like to? Chairman, Mr. Hanley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we can always use more money. The short answer. Transformation was never properly funded in my view, and I'm speaking as the chair of the board and in the board's view. And we had to be very careful as we move ahead that we don't cut into our programs, because graduating students is our primary objective here. So we're on the edge always of not being able to offer programs because we don't have the money, or we're delaying programs. And as I speak, we're very, very tight budget. Transformation itself is slowed down. Do the people have time to do it on the side of their desk? Not necessarily. A lot of them are trying to. They're doing the best they can. But it'll happen. It may be slowed down. And the transformation itself, to me, in my mind, has always been probably a 10-year process. It's not going to happen in 1 year, 2 years. But the most important thing from the board's perspective is that we not defer the existing programs by the college. We stay with our primary purpose, which is education and graduation. But money, yes, it's short. And just looking at the amount of third-party funding, that's may help in the short term. It may also come back to bite us.
Dr. Vardy-Dale. Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Please, Dr. Dale.
Interesting question. I think it's an important question. Yes, we can always use more dollars, but we do have to focus on what we are presently doing well. And so we will very closely look at any new requests that come in, even under the areas of specialization that I spoke about earlier, in terms of, do we have the funds to do it? Not only do we have the funds to do it, but do we have the funds to develop quality programming? So we now have a post-secondary framework. We now are going through quality assurance through Alberta. We're no longer at a point where we can say, okay, we need $500,000, but you're only going to give us $200,000, so we'll do the best that we can with that. If we're going to put quality programs together and niche programs that are going to attract students from the south and international, as well as looking after our students in the north, then we need to do it correctly. The other issue that has just come forward, and we're all aware of it, is that the government of the Northwest Territories has announced fiscal restraint in February. They have asked all departments to look at a 6% decrease in their operating budget. We were already lean at that point in time. We are leaner now because of that. So when a request comes forward, we will have to seriously look at what are the costs to truly run the program. And if we don't have the dollars to run the program, then it's going to have to be put on hold. So that may be bad news, but I think it's realistic news in terms of what we can do. We can't continue to do more. We can't continue to expand. We have to continue to work with what we have and do well with what we have.
Thank you for that, Doctor. Just before I go to Mr. Rogers again, I just want to point out to members that oddly enough, we've been moving along very swiftly and efficiently, which has garnered us a little more time, and I thank the witnesses for that as well. So once Mr. Rogers finishes his follow-up, I will have a few extra minutes for some, I'll call it a speed round. So I'll require members to be very efficient so we can get at least potentially one question further each. But unfortunately, we'll be forced not by the discretion of the chair, but by time of the clock. So anyway, I'll go to Mr. Rogers for his follow-up, and we'll sort of work people off the list in the most efficient way. Mr. Rogers, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the answers. Yeah, and I guess what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is that I know this is a process, and I know this is going to take some time, and and I think we're all excited to get there. And I guess I'll pivot then. So from the college's perspective, given the fact that you talked about you're fairly lean, given the fact, as your chairman said, you're doing some of this work from the side of your desk, what is kind of the culture? Is there still a sense of excitement, a sense, I guess, throughout the senior management team, the leadership team at the college, that this is something that everyone is very keen to work towards? And I know it's kind of a prickly question, I guess, but kind of what is the culture there in working towards this Polytechnic?
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Dr. Bardydale, please, if you would.
The transformation was not received fondly at the very beginning, as many people would have probably heard on the streets in terms of what we were doing. There was the question around why a Polytechnic. As we have seen success from things like our strategic enrollment management plan, we have garnered some additional interest. People are starting to see that some of the plans that we put into place are actually making a difference in terms of what we're doing. And so I would say that there is still some excitement around moving towards a Polytechnic. I think everyone is aware that we will probably be somewhat delayed for no reason, no one particular reason. But for a variety of reasons. People are still moving forward in the projects that they were on. We have been able to identify some dedicated staff to take on a few of those projects that when we disbanded the ACT team to continue to move things forward. Remember, the second phase of this, although it was announced that phase one was complete, I would say that phase one was really not complete, because when you change a policy or practice, then you have to implement it, and it causes you to go back and then look at the current situation. So the phases was a way for us to identify the projects, but the 200 projects were meant to move towards 2027, whereas the launch of the Polytechnic without everything done was planned for May of 2025. So there was always a 2-year lag there in terms of us being able to get there. But I would say that the work that's been done has been well received, and we're starting to see fruits of that work come forward.
Thank you, Doctor, for that. Okay, folks, I now have MLA Morris for our, what I call our speed round. So that requires everyone to work efficiently, collaboratively, of course, but we want the information and opportunity for all. So I have, please, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a note, you mentioned that the NRTP is being considered as one of our potential Made in the North degrees. I will just say, as a graduate of this program, it kind of warms my heart to hear that. And certainly, one of the things that kind of planted the seeds of passion in me for Aurora College transformation was the many kind of conversations I had with our program head at the time, and my instructors, just about how incredible the program is and how much it could attract people from around the world, because it's probably the only program on earth where you get to go out and spend time in the Barrens with caribou, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it's a speed round. Apologies, Mr. Chair. So what I wanted to get at is, have you considered a program which would benefit all 3 campuses or more. Just noting that I think every community that has campus infrastructure is wanting this transition to benefit them. So, I could envision a program like NRTP taking place where students spend, a few years in one community, another year in another community, and a year in another, getting kind of a wide breadth of experience across the north. And I think that would be very exciting for those communities and just ensure that benefit is spread across communities so no one's feeling like they're being left out. And, I could see us having programming beyond this one too, but speed round, apologies, Mr. Chair. I just want to know if you guys are considering that kind of thing to kind of build support for programming and just ensure that programming is benefiting students across the north.
Thank you, MLA Morris. I'm going to go first to Dr. James, and in case anyone else feels they want to jump in as well, in our most efficient manner. Thank you.
Hear that we have an NRTP graduate in the room here. Good job, Ms. Ondue. Indeed, there are many areas that we can expand on all campuses, but one area that I've just learned about is Aurora College is taking some leadership in the Northern Leadership Development Program, and is beginning to grow and develop in that area of providing leadership programming for people from the mines, people from the health organizations, as well as education. And so that is definitely an area that could potentially grow into another niche program of potentially in the future, like something like a Northern Indigenous Governance or Leadership Program or degree program as it advances. And that could be something that could happen on all 3 campuses. It's really right now in the infancy stages, because we're only doing one a program with two cohorts, but perhaps that could be something that could go across the board on all 3 campuses.
That was our speed answer.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I don't have anyone else on the speed round list. I go to the membership on the floor. Not seeing any. I go to Mr. Rogers online. Do you have any further questions that you'd like? Yes? Yeah. Okay. Not seeing anyone on the list, I go back to Dr. Vardy Dell for maybe a further comment, please.
So just a comment, we do have programs that are offered on 3 campuses. So our business administration and our office administration are offered on all 3 campuses at this point in time. We used to do it by video conference. When COVID came, we moved to Teams, and we're still delivering that on the 3 campuses. So we do have some examples of that. Back in ENRTP, I mean, one of the things we've been talking about is exactly what you're talking about. The environments are different in Fort Smith than they are in Inuvik, for instance, and maybe we need to be bringing the ENRTP program back to Inuvik, but flipping the students would have opportunities to work in both environments. So there is some discussion around that. I do just want to make a comment about a program. We have talked about Indigenous governance as a potential, as another one. However, one of the things that we've heard recently, and you can't make all the people happy all of the time, but one of the things that we've heard recently is that that's the degree program that the Yukon University put forward when they became a university, and many people have said, we don't want to be just like the Yukon. We don't want to follow their path. So please don't go in that direction. That's not going to stop us from not going in that direction. But I think that we really need to think about programs that are niche programs for us here. And offering them at a variety of sites would be an option that we certainly would look at. When we approved the General Studies program, when the board approved the General Studies program, that was one of the first motions that they made, the plan was to offer the General Studies program at each of the 3 campuses, 30 seats at each of the 3 campuses, and then an online option for students to stay in their home community. So every program that we offered face-to-face, if a student wasn't able to move to the campus, they could take it if they had internet capabilities from their home community. However, what we found very quickly after approving that was that we didn't have appropriate housing in Inuvik or Yellowknife to be able to offer the program at those two sites. So we will start with Fort Smith, which is where we do have some adequate housing to offer the program. So you can see how housing will influence where we offer the program as well. So just a comment.
Very detailed comment. Thank you very much. It was no, it was good. No. Your comments are important. From all three of you. You're our key witnesses to our success certainly for today. I have MLA McNeely, and I'm going to squeeze in a quick question after that. Once we're proceeding towards close. So please, Mr. McNeely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll make a suggestion. You know, the presentation we heard is good, but let's take that back to the communities. This way, the community leaders know the challenges you're having. Housing is a common one, but it would have more impact on the seriousness of housing if it's heard by yourselves. Picture yourselves in Good Hope meeting with the chief and council. Guaranteed it'll have a lot of impact, what challenges you have. And my other my question is, we heard a lot about the Polytechnic University and the transformation process, and from the last assembly it was all over the media and so on about Tin Can Hill. There was an outcry of that, so on. So just for clarity, the infrastructure side of the transformation is parked, and now you're focusing on moving from a college to a polytechnic institution. I'm just trying to get the big picture of the transformation. I know at the time there, the transformation on the infrastructure is going to be costing in the neighborhood of $500 million. And there was a number of residential challenges, a number of new build floor drawings and building drawings, and those types of presentations to justify the $500 million presentation or cost for the transformation. I just want to get a refresher on the current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, MLA McNeely. Dr. Vardidel, please, if you would.
To become a polytechnic, we do not need a campus in Yellowknife. I mean, that was one of the issues that was brought forward, was that we should be building a campus in Yellowknife. And the two ideas are together. But in order to become an actual polytechnic and be able to grant our own degrees and apply for additional research funding, as I mentioned in my presentation, we do not need the campus in Yellowknife. However, we do know that if we're successful with building niche programs and bringing more students and all of those other kinds of things, that we do need to fix our facilities right across at all three sites. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but one is not dependent on the other, but they are connected.
Thank you, Doctor, for that. If we're good, I'm going to squeeze in. Okay, I'm going to squeeze in a quick, really fast question. One observation is I don't encourage us to become an Athabasca University, but that said, they have models that work, and you know, it may be something. So I look forward to how you stimulate the northern economy in the context of learning, ingenuity, aspirations of all northerners in your own way. That's just a thought. The question specifically I have is I've never been a fan of Elgant placed in Maca. Now they certainly have lots of reasons why they say they have it in there, such as they work directly with communities. However, I think it's personally I've found it a missed opportunity, because I think Elgant should be stewarded under the college, knowing your reach, your nexus and excitement of education, longer vision of training and overlap of skills, including opportunities. That said, I would pose it to you folks, have you folks ever considered that as a potential fit down the road? And that's not saying you sidestep Maca, I'm just saying, would it be a good fit? Or because it's something of great interest of mine that our School of Expertise, especially after you underscored earlier, I can't remember who said it might have been you, Dr. Vardidel, about bringing in opportunities with College Nordique, Deshinta and everywhere, it speaks well to the opportunity of let's synergize our educational excitement. So I'll start with you, Dr. Vardidel, in case anyone else has more to add. I'll let them indicate as such, please.
Not specific as you're speaking about, but we have to stop competing is what we need to do, and I think we need to remove the silos to do that. And I agree with you that I think that we should be looking at expertise in education and post-secondary in one spot or together, so that we're not competing for the same limited dollars that are out there in terms of right now, as you saw with our budget, we run a significant third-party agreements for, we're begging for money all of the time. And so if we're competing for the same dollars and we're not working together, then we're not going to move this forward. So I agree with you in terms of that, and we are looking for all kinds of partnerships.
Thank you for that. Dr. James, if you have something, please.
To what Dr. Vardidel is talking about in terms of not working in silos, the upcoming Indigenous Language Diploma Program that is a pilot for Tlicho is working that way in terms of developing the partnerships with ECE, with Aurora College, and also College Nordique, because we are a very small jurisdiction and we need to share all the resources, and if indeed we're not sharing, especially in the promotion of Indigenous language revitalization, we're going to fail from the get-go. So it's very, very important to ensure those partnerships in this one program and the rest of the other programs that we're speaking about. Marcy Cho.
Thank you for that addition. And I just want to emphasize, I don't believe working together diminishes in any way the representation of what you bring to the table. So in other words, I don't see Deshinta falling off the table as a specific importance or identity. I don't see College Nordique losing its identity by co-locating, partnering, and finding ways to synergize skills, even just enthusiasm. So, so that said, I'm now going to, before I proceed to close, don't apologize. We don't get you here often. So please, if you would, before I close.
Just a quick comment related to that. The focus of what we all should be doing in those organizations that you just mentioned is we want to create the student experience. We want the students to go away with what they wanted, and I believe that collaboration, if we focus on the students, then no one's going to lose their identity. So I agree with you.
Thank you kindly. Oh, thank you very much. I always have time for someone who agrees with me, by the way. Especially on the record. Emily Morris really wanted to squeeze in a final. We'll do that. I'm sure he'll be extra efficient given the fact that we've almost run out of time. Thank you.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. It's one sentence. If you can't provide this on the fly, that's okay, if you want to get back to committee about this, but I'd be interested to hear from the college, you know, knowing that the key thing that you identified here is a lack of funding to get the transition done. What funding specifically do you need us to fight for to get you in order to move this thing along at the pace that we want it to move? So love to hear from you. If you have that number off the top of your head, that'd be great, or if you just want to provide it to the committee later. Thanks.
I'm looking for Dr. Vardidel.
I would be speaking out of turn if I suggested something, but I will put it on the table. There are many things that we need, and we're juggling things back and forth. We had used third-party funding to create a Center for Teaching and Learning that every other post-secondary in the country has. The Center for Teaching and Learning is a center that helps build capacity within the institution. It helps add quality to programming. It supports all instructors in the academic field in terms of how do we deliver effectively in terms of learning to teach online, how do I make my classes better, all of those kinds of things. Unfortunately for us, we ran the center for 3 years and we continued to apply for additional funds to run that center. And we had to close that center because we were unable to come up with third-party funds. So if I had Santa Claus sitting in the corner over there, that's what I would be asking for. I would be asking for $500,000 to reinstate on an ongoing basis, not as a third party, because we've already run into that, because that's going to help the college across the board. It's going to help the education, it's going to help the students, and it's going to help move things forward. That's what I'd be asking for. But there are people who are listening today who will say, well, what about us? We needed this, we needed that. There are many other needs, but that's one that I think would really make a big difference in terms of moving things forward.
Thank you, Doctor, for your frankness, and I agree there's always more needs than ability to meet those or rise to them. And it doesn't make them any less important. It's just sometimes we have to pick ones. Folks, we've reached the appointed time where I'm going to have to close the hearing, or discussion, I should call it that way, as opposed to hearing. First off, I'd like to thank Dr. Bardidel for your leadership and tenureship up to date. You're the current president, I believe, until August, and I want to thank you for your the guidance, how you've stewarded the college to where we are today. And, you know, we're all grateful in our own ways because it's an exciting opportunity for all Northerners, not just the institution itself, but it really develops and thrives, and it's quite a beacon for all of us to be proud of. At the same time, I want to thank Dr. James, who will be leading our institution going forward. I have no doubt we'll see you in the future, and I have a little bit of a working relationship with you in the past. And as such, I can certainly speak to your passion for education and inspiring Indigenous people to assert their prominent role and right role in being involved in the destiny of our future. And I'm really excited to see what you'll bring. I'm very excited. That said, I'd like to go to the board chair, Mr. Hanley, who I've had a long and good working experience with. And I'm glad you'll be part of the stewardship of the college as it moves forward. And I know you'll bring some interesting dynamics, especially given the fact that you've been, you know, Deputy Minister of Education, amongst many other things, including Premier. So, I mean, you know education. If there's someone in the room here, obviously the doctors as well, but if somebody understands the important role of leadership and the board components and how they fold together with governance, you. So I'll ask you for a final comment, Mr. Hanley, and then I'll close the hearing if you'd like to finish up. Please.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make some comments from the board's perspective, particularly. The board is a very practical group of people who are not necessarily educators, but they're thinking this through. They live in communities and so on. It was very distressing when we went into Inuvik a couple of weeks ago, and out of that building, the main campus building, there were 8 students. And 6, I think, of the 8 or 5 of the 8 were upgrading. The other so we've got a $40 million building. We've got the mobile units, no students. So if you're asking where could we spend money, where should we put the effort, then I think our board would say, look, we've got to get the students into the classrooms. I don't buy that they have to take 5 or 6 years to do extra work. I think if they want to, 90% of them are very capable of doing grade 12 in 12 years. They're very capable of being qualified to get into our institution. But we need to work together with the community, political leaders, with the parents, with the students, and everybody work together. Very quickly, quite a few years ago, 20 years ago, one political leader, when the Caddy Diamond Mine was opening, decided he was going to educate his people. And I don't know how he did it, but he went out and he knocked on doors. The number of Clecho students in that region went from something like 10 up to close to 100 who were in college or programs, and they were going to school. They weren't just watching TV or playing games at home. And I think we need to put the emphasis there, but we can't do it alone as a college. We need the whole community to work with us on it. So if I were going to find money to put on something, Mr. McNeely talked about a regional, you didn't call it a summit, but a workshop in the region to say, look, students, we've got to get through with good grades and move on. So that's where the board would like to put its emphasis, and I'm sure next month when we do our professional development goal-setting exercise, I'm sure we're going to come out with saying, look, we've got to get students. This is crazy to have buildings that are half empty. residences that are empty, residences are falling down. So we got to get that. Where else are we going to put money? Well, housing. It's a different situation in Inuvik because we have a dorm there with capacity for 21 students. We got one person living in it. Yellowknife is a different problem. Fort Smith's a different problem. But housing is definitely an issue that we need to find support on. Whether we'll get it from the federal government, I don't know. I'm not as optimistic as some people might be that the government will just write us a check. Transformation, the problem from the board's perspective, that transformation, development of Polytechnic was never funded as it should have been. And we're paying the price for that now, where we're delaying programs and we're delaying things, trying to balance a budget and survive a bit longer. We've got a lot of proposals from people wanting us to take on new programs, and we have no capacity. And that's a sad state of affairs. So you can't expand. So we need the money to do that, but we need the students more than anything else to show up there. We're not ready to give in and say, well, let's bring in a whole bunch of international students, even if they came here, to raise money. That's not the business we're in. And there's lots of universities doing that in the South. We're interested in getting northern students educated, and priority, of course, is with the 50% of our population who don't have the same choice, the Indigenous population. I think that those are some of the main ones. Like we're not going to give up on transformation, on creating a Polytechnic. We believe it's the right way to go, but how fast can we go is really dependent on getting the resources to be able to do it. The students are out there. We need to bring them into the college, and our college will be much more attractive than right now. We need to be flexible. We have to be creative. We have some problems that are our own, for example, on the application process. I don't know how we fix that, but we should be trying to find a way of fixing it so we can get more people in, not having them applying at the last minute and then finding that the cutoff date is being met. So there's lots for us to do, but there's a lot that we want to work with you, your standing committee, and all MLAs on, and with cabinet. And then the last comment I'll mention is with the community learning centers. And you have more instructors than you do students attending the community learning center. That's a very expensive resource. We need to fix that one, certainly. We can't let the North fall into a doldrum of just accepting that, well, most people don't finish high school, therefore it's okay. We'll give them upgrading later on. We should be finishing high school. They shouldn't be counting on the college to educate them later on. That'll eat up all our resources too fast. So I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but I'm not. Transformation, yes, students, we can deal with that. And the resources, housing in particular, we can deal with that too, and we will. But transformation will be a little longer, I think, than what we had anticipated. With that, I thank the committee. We have made our own notes. We'll share the notes, and we'll be communicating with you again. So, Masi Cho.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, I'd like to thank all committee members for participating, both those in the room and those online, as well as our filled public gallery. I do appreciate the participation of one and all. That said, I now formally would like to say good afternoon, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Thank you. It's closed.